The story begins with the old man writing with his pen, identifying himself as Chartia Wunder de Kamsley, the Grand Chancellor of the Enox Empire. Chartia describing himself as a loyal servant who prefers the pleasure of serving his master and the glory of ruling as the king of vampires. A magic book appears, open, hovering over a complex magic circle, and Chart announces that he dares to leave this record to document the unlimited conquest of his master. The record begins describing a great event. One day, amidst a huge flash of purple lightning that filled the sky, a man suddenly appears out of nowhere, coming from another world. This man, who appeared accompanied by a catastrophic scene that included a huge dragon, began to invade the continent of Ark. Following this invasion, great crowds appear, enthusiastically cheering for the life of the Emperor of the Great Ark Empire, celebrating His Majesty's victory. Chancellor Kremsley approaches his master, the Emperor, congratulating him and telling him, with immense happiness, that with this victory all dimensions are under his feet. The Emperor continues to turn his back on his Chancellor, expressing his thoughts, explaining that in the end no one knows anything about his homeland. Kamsley looked at him with concern, wondering what was wrong with him. Kamsley resumes the narrative of the story, explaining that this man is his master, and since the day he appeared, it only took 50 years to conquer the vast continent. Kamsley continues to describe the enormous abilities of his master. He is a being who can command millions of dead with a simple thought, and his skill with the sword has the ability to split mountains and cleave seas. This master is known by the title Emperor of the Enox Empire, and he is an unclassifiable catastrophe who descended from another world. He is immortal and the king of the dead who rules the living. Kamsley confirms that of all the names used to describe him, none is more appropriate than his. Innumerable beings kneel before his overwhelming power, and the fools who challenged him were turned into undead and forced to declare their eternal loyalty to him. No one nor anything was a match for his majesty. He defeated the dragons that terrorized the continent, the Demon King and the 7 archdemons of the demonic world, the Celestial Demon and the leader of the World Martial Arts Alliance, and even the King of Spirits, who guards the World Tree. And, of course, all dimensions connected to the continent of Enox fell at his feet. But Kamsley wonders how a humble being like him could understand his master's will, because what he really wanted was something completely different. All he wanted was to return to his homeland, to Earth, after failing to find a way back to his home. Despite wandering through all the dimensions, the Emperor summoned all the gods of war under his command, and, from his throne, addressed his followers, asking them to listen carefully, announcing that he was tired and now wished to enter a deep sleep. His followers were shocked, and one of them wondered what this decision meant, while another, who looked like a skeletal piece of trash, stated that, as his servants, they would continue to look for a way for him to return. But the Emperor replied by questioning the point of returning now, explaining that almost 300 years had passed since he left his homeland. He added that his family and friends who he missed dearly must have grown old, gotten sick, and all died. The Emperor concluded that it was too late. While his followers looked at him with sadness, consequently, he issued a new order, announcing that from now on, everyone should focus only on finding a way for him to enter eternal rest. The followers shouted in despair, contesting His Majesty's decision. Kamsley narrates that the sounds of crying in the Imperial Palace did not cease that day, but the Emperor's order could not be contested. In the end, the oldest liches in the palace created a disintegration magic circle designed to swallow everything. The Emperor looked at the magical circle, commenting that he supposed he could finally see them all now. With only those words, his master walked alone towards the magical circle, and Kamsley followed him, calling out to him, and at that moment, Kamsley appears on the scene, running and rushing, calling his master loudly, and continuing to run after him towards the magic circle, announcing that he would serve him even in death. When the Emperor's foot stepped onto the shiny magic circle, it seems that everything had come to an end. Oh so, Kamsley thought. Suddenly, a bright light shined, and a voice was heard asking, why the lights were off. A man, the emperor, in a new body named Kang-jun, appears holding a little girl and scolds Kemsley, who shouts upon waking up in an unfamiliar environment due to his petness, ordering him to keep the lights on when he's at home. Kemsley, who is wearing modern sportswear and holding his head, replies that, with all due respect, in the darkest of nights, a candle shines brighter than the sun. Kang-jun looks at him with disgust, wondering how the scoundrel dares to talk back, and advises him that if he has to start his speech with all due respect, it's better not to say anything. Kemsley clears his throat in embarrassment. Then, Kemsley asks his master why he wasn't in bed so late. Kang-jun, in a room full of children's toys, replies if Kemsley is joking with him, and explains that he can't sleep because the baby isn't sleeping. Kemsley bows deeply, offering his deepest apologies. Then Kang-jun tells him not to shout, wondering what he will do if he makes the baby cry. And then the baby starts crying because of the loud noise. Kang-jun angrily tells Kemsley that he was the one who woke her up, so he has to deal with it. Kemsley suggests, starting as usual, with all due respect, that she might want a meal, to which Kang-jun replies that he just fed her. Then Kemsley suggests, with the same preface, that perhaps her diaper should be checked, due to which Kang-jun replies that she is perfectly clean. Finally, Kemsley admits to him, after repeating with all due respect, that with his humble knowledge he cannot understand why is she crying. So Kang-jun tells him, useless as always. The scene returns to Kemsley writing in his medical chart, and as he's writing, he gets an urgent call that startles him. Kang-jun's voice announces that a late-night snack was arrived, ordered for them by his sister. Kemsley's eyes light up with excitement at the mention of food. Kang-jun explains that it's chicken. Kemsley then bolts out of the room, shouting, "Chicken!" and leaving his book lying open behind him. The narration continues from the book, where Kemsley explains that due to the failure of the magic circle, his master finally returned to the homeland he had longed for. And he writes that there was a presence in this place his master could never have imagined, especially since he had never been married and never had a lover before. The scene then shows a red hair tie, a reference to Her Highness, the princess. Back in the present, the three of them, Kang-jun, Kemsley, and the baby Seol, sit down to eat chicken. Kemsley remarks that chicken is always delicious, addressing a woman named Subin. Subin, Kang-jun's sister, appears and tells old man Kemsley to eat his fill. Subin offers to hold Seol and feed her, so he can eat comfortably too. She then asks if he stayed home again today, noting that he still seems quite confused while eating. Kang-jun replies that he's comfortable enough being at home and insists that he's not actually confused. Subin looks at him with concern and says that he's indeed confused, especially after going through something like that. Kang-jun tries to insist he's really fine, but Subin cuts him off, telling him he shouldn't pretend to be okay and that she's just grateful he made it back alive. Subin reminds him that he disappeared during the first gate incident, asking if he realized how many years have passed. She adds that he was trapped inside the gate for years and has only just returned home, so it will be strange for him to recover immediately. Kang-jun corrects her for the 1000th time, while holding Seol, saying he wasn't trapped in a gate, but was suddenly summoned to a place called Aenox continent. Subin replies sarcastically, asking if he's going to start talking again about being that incredible powerful emperor from that continent. Kang-jun confirms it, explaining that it's the truth. A description for Lee Kang-jun appears, Emperor of Aenox, Gate Survival Unemployed. Subin keeps up her sarcasm, then points to Kemsley and asks who the old man is. Kemsley responds by introducing himself to her. Kang-jun explains that Kemsley is his close assistant and another unemployed gate survivor, adding that he used to help him with his duties and discuss matters of state. Kemsley chimes in, noting that as a loyal servant, he was responsible for most of the administrative affairs. Lee Subin, Kang-jun's older sister and a factory worker, respond with feigned understanding. Subin follows up with a sign, pointing out that most gate survivors suffer from mental breakdowns or lose their ability to speak due to PTSD. She expresses her relief that Kang-jun and Old Man Crumpset only seems to be suffering from mild delusions. Kang-jun looks annoyed and tells her that even though she is his only sister, it's rude to call him crazy. Subin reassures him, saying it's okay, and adds while patting him that he returned after 3 years and it's normal for him to have difficult adjusting. Subin continues to encourage him, saying that he has Seol and he's still young, so he shouldn't worry and should just focus on his treatment. She then corrects herself, changing treatment to adjustment, and states she will do her best to manage things until then. While Kang-jun remains silent, she then turns to the old man and tells Kramsley that he can stay with them for as long as he likes until he can find his family. Kramsley expresses his deep gratitude to Subin's mother. Kang-jun looks inquiringly at Seol. Meanwhile, babe Seol, the daughter of the unemployed Kang-jun, makes a sound. Seol appears holding her untied beep. Then Kang-jun murmurs that he will tie it for her. And while holding the beep strings, he mentions that in the past he personally tied the knots used to hang those guilty of high treason. Sounds like a health thing to say to a baby. Seol looks at him innocently, struggling to repeat his words. Kang-jun confirms seriously and asks her to watch closely, while holding a chicken neck and demonstrating with the beep strings. He explains that if knot is woven tightly like this, the neck snaps immediately, and before he can finish, Subin, who suddenly appears, screams his name. She's in shock and asks what on earth he's telling a baby. Kang-jun calmly responds that he was only providing paternal education. Angrily, Subin orders him to stop and clean Seol's face, and forbids him from telling any more scary stories to the baby from now on. Kang-jun mutters that his is very difficult. Kang-jun gently wipes Seol's face. Subin comments that Seol seems to like her father's touch. Kang-jun holds the baby, who was started to get sleepy, and announces that he's going to put her in the room. He gently lays her down on her bed and thinks of his daughter, who was born while he was away. Kang-jun remembers a previous scene where Subin was holding the baby and saying that her name was Lee Seol, and that her mother died during childbirth while he was missing, and she asks him if he remembered anything. In his memory, Kang-jun replied that that was 300 years ago. Subin starts to repeat 300, but stopped and said she understood. Then she reminded him that she was still his daughter and asked him to treat her well. Back in the present, Kang-jun sits beside the sleeping Seol and thinks, crossing his arms, that this situation is not so bad. Kang-jun recalls another memory from his previous world in a field at sunset, where Kramsley asks him what he would like to do if he could return to his homeland. Kang-jun repeated the question while thinking, and after thinking, the emperor replied that he would like to enjoy a quiet, ordinary daily life where no one notices him, existing but barely being present. In the present, Kang-jun covers his daughter Seol with a blanket, and completes his thought that raising a child and continuing to live would also be one of those ordinary ways of life. Kang-jun stands up and his eyes land on some papers on a nearby table. He picks up the papers and finds a collection of bills and payment notices, including a late payment notice. On the afternoon of the following day, Kang-jun appears wearing a different shirt and holding a spoon, seriously announcing that they seems to have a problem. Kang-jun is show feeding Seol with a spoon, while Kramsley stands in the background. Kramsley hears Kang-jun announce that there is a problem. Then Kramsley wonders worriedly about the nature of this problem. Kang-jun confirms the matter and asks Seol if the food is good, to which the baby responds affirmatively. Kramsley thinks to himself in shock, wondering if the great absolute master himself just said the word problem. Kang-jun asks Kramsley to read those documents out loud. Kramsley holds the papers and begins to read a debt collection notice for unpaid phone bills. Kang-jun asks for the next one. Then Kramsley continues reading a water shut-off notice due to late payments. Kang-jun asks for the next ones again. Kramsley continues reading a notice for the suspension of electricity supply, followed by a gas shut-off notice due to an overdue balance. Kang-jun interrupts him, saying that is enough, while he continues to feed Seol. Kramsley asks Kang-jun, apologizing for saying so, if all those documents are demanding late payments. Kang-jun confirms that Kramsley is right, and adds that his sister didn't mention it, but it seems that the financial situation is a complete mess. Kramsley, not understanding who would dare demand payment from a member of the royal family, suggests that they could temporarily increase tax rates and impose progressive taxes on nobles and regional lords. Kang-jun stifles a laugh and then bursts into laughter at the idea of the progressive taxes while holding his head. which horrifies Kremsley, who wonders what is wrong with his master. Kang-jun tells him with a mischievous smile that he is completely wrong, and he explains that if they compare their situation on Earth to the social classes in Enox, they would barely be at the level of slaves or commoners. Kang-jun continues his explanation, pointing his finger and noting that they have to endure hard labor and service, receiving only a small amount of money from the ruling class just to survive. Kremsley looks extremely shocked, and he thinks to himself that although he has a pure lineage of royal vampires and once ascended to the rank of vampire lord and earned the title of archduke, serving his majesty with countless meritorious acts in this world, he is nothing but a slave. Kremsley staggers and tries to pull himself together, telling himself to calm down and deciding that a true follower must prove their loyalty even in times of crisis. Kremsley kneels before Kang-jun, announcing that he will help him establish a new empire so that he can ascend to the throne once again. To which Kang-jun indefinitely responds that he should do as he pleases. Kang-jun sighs and hugs Seol, explaining that they need to earn money. In a later scene, Kang-jun tries to feed Seol baby food, asking her to open her mouth, but Seol refuses. Sobbing appears watching them and says that they made that baby food especially with black sesame seeds, but it seems that Seol doesn't like it very much. Kang-jun remembers a piece of advice that when a child refuses to eat, they should never be forced, but instead should be helped to find interest in the eating process by framing it as a form of play. Kang-jun decides they are going to play a game, so Seol and Sobin looks at him with interest. Kang-jun explains that it's a competition to see who can chew and swallow the food better. Kang-jun lifts the spoon, his eyes sparkling, and announces that if she wins, she can do whatever she wants today, and then asks if she accepts the challenge. Seol's eyes sparkle with excitement, and she shouts, agreeing to the challenge. Sobin smiles and encourages her, asking Seol to eat and defeat her father. Seol watches excitedly, while Kang-jun wears a mischievous smile, thinking to himself that she's too slow. Kang-jun thinks back to his past, remembering that he was thrown into the middle of everything on the continent of Enox, and says that the only reason he was able to become absolute power was because he did his best even when hunting a single rabbit. Then he begins to eat fiercely, telling her that with her pathetic speed she will never be able to defeat him. Seol shows a shocked reaction to her father's challenge, and her eyes quickly fill with tears. The baby starts crying, so Sobin runs to her and holds her, angrily asking Kang-jun why he made her cry. Kang-jun defends himself, saying he wasn't trying to make her cry, but Sobin responds that anyone would think he was trying to make her cry. Kang-jun looked at his crying daughter and addresses her, saying that if she thinks she's is unfair, she must become stronger. Sobin remains silent, and Seol cries even more. Then Sobin sighs while trying to calm her. Meanwhile, Kremsley is seen writing in his log that His Majesty the Emperor challenged the princess to a full duel this morning and that he did his best against the princess, who is not even 3 years old, and secured the victory. Kremsley continues to write while looking out the window, concluding his entry by saying that it is impossible not to feel a slight concern about his future actions. Later, Kang-jun appears holding Seol and asks his sister, Sobin, if he can go out today. Sobin stops cleaning and asks, surprised, why he is leaving so suddenly. Sobin expresses her concern, saying it's her day off so she can take care of Seol, but for him to go out alone is worrying. Kremsley intervenes laughing and reassures Sobin that it will be perfectly fine, explaining that he will accompany him. Sobin asks, surprised, if he will be joining him as well. The scene shifts to Kang-jun and Kremsley riding a bus. Kang-jun remembers his conversation with Sobin about money. In the memory, he recalls Sobin admitting that she doesn't have a single cent, explaining that the neighborhood where they live is dangerous, therefore the monthly rent is cheap, but she is now using the security deposit. Kang-jun remembers asking her how much she needed, but she told him not to worry about it, saying she would find a solution and that he should just focus on himself. And she added with a faint laugh that she just hoped to win about 1 billion WS from the lottery ticket she bought this week. Sobin continues in the memory that if she won, they could move to a safe place and she would be able to focus on Seol until he found a decent job. Sobin looked at Seol, who was asleep and and hugging her leg, adding that Seol is at an age where she needs all the love and attention she can get. Back on the bus, Kang-jun thinks to himself that this is a problem that money can solve. He tells Kremsley that he was thinking about it. He explains to him that for his financial activities to go well, he will need a new name and identity. Kremsley wonders if he is talking about his name. Kang-jun confirms and tells him that he was thought of a new name for him that suits this place. Kremsley gulps and thinks excitedly that the great emperor will give him a new name. Kang-jun announces that he is no longer Sharcha Aphon the Kremsley, but Choi Do-soo. Kremsley repeats the name in confusion and thinks to himself that he wasn't been in this world for long. Kang-jun notices his expression and asks if he doesn't like the new name. Then Kremsley shakes his head in denial. Then Kang-jun asks him about the expression on his face. Kang-jun explains that the name Do-soo has been passed down from generation to generation and is reserved only for the most loyal followers, and that Do means rock and Soo means steel, symbolizing that Kremsley possesses a loyalty as solid as rock and steel. Kang-jun adds that he will change the name if he doesn't like it. Then Kremsley interrupts him, enthusiastically telling him that he wouldn't dare, as a humble servant, to arbitrarily judge the value of a name given to him by the emperor himself. Kang-jun nods, expressing his happiness that he likes the name. Then he thinks to himself the name is much better than Kinga, which was the first name that came to his mind. They arrive at a bus station in the city. Kang-jun tells Do-soo that they have arrived and must get off. Do-soo Kremsley looks around questioningly, expressing his gratitude for his master's generosity, but asks exactly where they are going. Kang-jun responds that they were heading toward a gate. Do-soo's eyes sparkle and he thinks excitedly that the gate must be a place filled with all kinds of monsters. Then he laughs and tells him that he was made a wise decision. Kang-jun asks Do-soo Kremsley why he was so excited, and the latter replied philosophically that no matter how exceptional a famous sword is, leaving it in its sheath for too long makes it dull and rusty. He added that the mere idea of finally moving excited him. How long it had been since he was on a battlefield where blood mixed with screams and life and death were at stake. Then Kang-jun commented as they walked that it might be a little difficult. Kang-jun then explained that they would only be going as porters, which left Do-soo confused. The farmer confirmed that hunting inside the gate requires obtaining a registration card worth 1 million won per person. Then Do-soo kneeled in the street, announcing that he could not just be a porter under any circumstances, and asks his master to let him work alone until the family's financial situation improved. People gather around them, questioning the situation. Then Kang-jun asks his companion to stop causing a commotion because everyone was watching them. However, Do-soo refused to stand up and swore that even if a blade were held to his throat, he would not accept working as a porter. Then a shadow covered Kang-jun's face, and he asks softly if he would really refuse to stand up. He then asks him in a harsh tone if he wanted to die. Do-soo panicked and thought his master was angry, remembering that ignoring the warning could make him suffer the same fate as Shama Ma, the heavenly demon who died tragically. Then he quickly stood up and apologized to his master, begging for forgiveness. Kang-jun put his hand on his companion's shoulder and told him he knew his words came from his loyalty. Kang-jun then reassured him, explaining that he had heard a dorm's daily wage was around 300,000 won. He added that they would only need to work for a few days to cover the registration fees and bills, after which they could quit the job. And as they were talking, a strange man approaches them. The man was dressed in hunting gear and carrying a backpack. He asks if they were the candidates for the porter position at the ranked gate that day. The scenes show the area surrounding the entrance of the glowing purple gate, with guards and passers-by scattered around it. Do-soo noted with surprise that people were passing by as if nothing were happening, even though the gate was open. The man introduces himself as Kim Bongo, a C-rank hunter, and then introduces them to the other hunters. Then a massive bald hunter named Lee Bong-chu expressed his disgust at the fact that an old man and a scrawny kid would be working as porters. Dao-su replied that despite his age, he was still capable of doing the work and began to introduce himself before Lee Bong-chu mockingly cut him off. Lee Bong-chu hurriedly explaining that being a porter is so strenuous that even strong men struggle with it, disdainfully questioning what old man and a scrawny kid could possibly achieve there. Dao-su then whispered to his master, wondering if he should kill them, but Kang-jun rejected the idea, explaining that the time had not yet come. He then reminded him that they only needed to work as porters for a few days to gather the money required to obtain their awakened identification card. Dao-su then realized his master's intention and thought with admiration that he would have made a mistake if not for his master's wisdom. Then Kang-jun stepped forward and asked who the leader of the group was. Kim Bong-gu replied that he was the squad leader, and Kang-jun asks if their hesitation to hire them was due to their unreliable appearance, which Kim admitted. Then Lee Bong-chu intervened, asserting that they were strong and wouldn't cause any trouble. Kim Bong-gu remained hesitant, weighing his options and wondering what he should do. He remembered his family in the hospital, contemplating his desperate need for money this week, and in the end, he decided to accept both men into the team, convinced that he couldn't afford to lose out on this gate. Lee Bong-chu asks Kim Bong-gu in shock, questioning if he was being serious. Kim Bong-gu reassured him, explaining that since he was a D-rank gate, no serious accidents should occur, and he believed the two of them could handle it. Kim Bong-gu reminded Lee Bong-chu of his financial situation, explaining that he had to pay his mother's hospital bills, his brother's academy fees, and his field trip expenses this week. Lee Bong-chu reluctantly agreed. Kim Bong-gu thanked Lee Bong-chu for his understanding, to which the latter replied that there was no need for thanks, adding that they had that F-rank hunter with them as well. Lee Bong-chu explaining his reasoning that the F-rank hunter wouldn't be of any use to their combat force anyway. He added that if they made him share the load with the porters, the baggage problem would be solved. Kang-jun observed his interaction. He thought to himself that it seems the other person was in a similar situation. At that moment, Lee Bong-chu saw the F-rank hunter approaching. He shouted his name, asking why he was taking so long, and adding that he had only asked him to bring a cup of coffee, sighing that he had finally arrived. The F-rank hunter runs over out of breath and offers the coffee with an apology. As Lee Bong-chu takes the coffee, Kang-jun observes the scene, wondering if a lower level hunter can be treated like a servant, and thinking that Earth is no different from the continent of Enox, where the strong prey on the weak. Feeling somewhat bitter about it for some reason, Lee Bong-chu throws his bags on the ground and shouts at the others, wondering what they are doing and asking if they plan on leaving tomorrow. The F-rank hunter tries to protest, but Lee Bong-chu hurriedly interrupts him, telling him to stay back to help the porters, and sarcastically asks if he thinks the old man and the skinny boy can carry the luggage properly. Lee Bong-chu continues to scold him, reminding him that he was kind enough to let him join, and adding that frankly if he went to the front he would only be a hindrance. The F-rank hunter submits, saying that he understands. Then Lee Bong-chu turns to Kang-jun and calls him ignorant. Kang-jun repeats the word in his mind, surprised. Lee Bong-chu assures him, pointing his finger at him, that he is indeed serious, and warns him that he won't have the luxury of worrying about his own life in there. Therefore, he must not dare to get in their way. And he adds that the same applies to the old man. Dao-su becomes furious, wondering how that insolent scoundrel dares to speak that way. After that, Lee Bong-chu walks away. Then the F-rank hunter approaches the luggage, announcing that he will carry the heaviest bag. And as he hefts a large bag into his back, he adds that even though he is only F-rank, he is still awakened, and while he might be of no use in combat, he can easily carry a few bags. Kang-jun looks at him and agrees. When the hunter hesitates for a moment and asks what is wrong, Kang-jun replies that he wants to give him a piece of advice. The hunter asks him in surprise what he means, to which Kang-jun explains that he needs to earn money today at all costs and that he doesn't want any trouble. And as the hunter wanders in confusion, Kang-jun stares at him with penetrating gaze, saying that he is pretending to be so naive and so weak, and advises him that at least for today he should continue acting that way until the end. Kang-jun adds coldly that he only needs to help the carry the luggage and return in silence, wondering if that is so difficult to understand. Then he turns to Dao-su and says they should go, and Dao-su agrees. And as they reach the entrance office, Dao-su asks if this is some kind of entry procedure or a staff member behind the counter. Here and Bongo address them, confirming the reservation to use the gate near Guru Digital Complex station, and adding that they may enter now. However, the staff member warns them that, although this is only a D-rank gate, a series of fatal accidents have occurred here recently. Kim Bong-gu wordly repeats the phrase fatal accidents, which the staff member confirms, explaining that the administration was designating it as an investigation site. They add that while the difficulty isn't considered high, the cause remains unknown, so they should please be careful. Kim Bong-gun thanks them in response. The glowing purple gate appears outside. The three hunters, Kim Bong-gu, Lee Bong-shu, and the rank F hunter, Hank, rush through the gate. Kang-jun tells Dao-su that they should go too. Dao-su agrees, and they follow the others inside. As soon as they enter, a system interface appears before Kang-jun in a black void, displaying messages such as starting player information registration, determining player combat power, and loading player achievements. With progress purchases appearing finally, two last messages pop up. The player physical abilities exceed the standard, therefore an accurate measurement cannot be loaded, and player information registration complete. Afterward, the team find themselves in a dark and eerie forest, and Lee Bong-chu remarks that there is something suspicious about this gate. Lee Bong-shu continues wondering if they are informed that undead-type monsters will appear. Kim Bong-gu confirms, saying they must do their best to finish the raid quickly. Kang-jun walks behind them. Suddenly, a massive blue system window appears in front of Kang-jun alone. The window displays the player's name as Lee Kang-jun, a level 1 necromancer. It lists his titles and stats as question marks in parentheses, and explains that the player's level is too low to summon followers. Kang-jun wonders, what is this? As he continues to analyze the window, and he thinks with annoyance that being level 1 is a complete nonsense, adding that even he was difficult measuring his own strength, so who dares to measure it this way? He wonders, also questioning the meaning of divine power. Still, Kang-jun finds the titles interesting. He assumes he obtained the title Absolute Necromancer when his dark magic reached the 90th circle. Looking at the Dimensional Invader title, he assumes he earned it because he intentionally plunged several dimensions into crisis while searching for a way back to Earth. As for the Demon Slayer title, he figures he has likely killed over 1 million demons. And regarding the Dragon Slayer title, he assumes he received it for killing that dragon back then. He then moves on the Plunderer of the World Tree title. Kang-jun finds it incredible that they would go as far as giving him a title just for snatching the Divine Tree from the Spirit World. He recalls that he only took it to plant in the palace garden because it looked empty, adding to himself that he had no idea it would wither so quickly. Kang-jun looks at the followers section and realizes that if he increases his level, he will be able to summon the followers with whom he formed a contract. Kang-jun smiles, thinking that he won't be limited to just Dao-su Kremsley if he could also summon the Imperial Court Ministers, the Palace Staff, the Chiefs of Staff, and the Treasury to Earth. It would be incredibly convenient. At that moment, Lee Bong-chu snaps at Kang-jun, scolding him for being distracted in a place where their lives are on the line. Bong-gu announces that they need to get out of there. The group treks through the dark and desolate forest, where the three hunters walk in front while Kang-jun and Dao-su follow behind. Lee Bong-shu comments with disgust about how disgusting the place is, where the three hunters walk in front while Kang-jun and Dao-su follow behind. Lee Bong-shu comments with disgust about how disgusting the place is, and Bong-gu agrees with him, saying they should finish this quickly and get out of there. The rank F hunter turns towards Dao-su, and Kang-jun wonders if they should just continue following them. Dao-su Kremsley whispers to Kang-jun that this place is surprisingly comfortable, and he adds that he feels as though his exhausted body and mind are recovering, to which Kang-jun responds that he's kind. Kang-jun looks around the dense forest, wondering if there shouldn't be undead-type monsters there, and he thinks that this place is similar to the Deadlands, a forbidden area on the continent of Enox, and he feels that it is refreshing for the first time. Suddenly, Kim Bong-gu raises his hand and orders everyone to stop. The F-rank hunter raises himself, gathering glowing blue energy in his hands. Kim Bong-gu says it's time to get to work, to which the F-rank hunter replies affirmatively. A group of armored skeletons emerges from the ground in front of them. Kim Bong-gu gathers his magical energy, forming a massive icy spear. He shouts and hurls the spear at one of the skeletons, and unleashes his attack, which pierces through the skeletons. Kang-jun watches the magical explosion with slight interest. Kang-jun continues to watch the fight and thinks it is interesting. Meanwhile, Lee Bong-chul uses his massive shield to block the attack and defeat several skeletons. Kang-jun analyzes the scene and thinks that they are weak, but at least they have form. After the fight ends, the ground is filled with skeletons' remains. Kim Bong-gu sighs in relief, noting that it is all there is to it. Then he orders the group to collect the mana stones first and they move forward. Kang-jun, Dao-su, and the F-rank hunter begin collecting the glowing purple stones among the scattered graves and bones. Suddenly, more skeletons attack them. Lee Bong-chul vents his anger, wondering with exasperation if there are more of them and how many times this has happened while blocking an attack with his shield. He shouts at the skeletons, telling them to get away from him. Kang-jun warns that he might want to be careful this time. This irritates Lee Bong-chul, who asks him exasperately what he means. Kang-jun calmly explains that there are archers among them. Lee Bong-chul mocks him, wondering if this is nonsense, when suddenly arrows fly in his direction. Grumples angrily as he struggles to raise his shield to block the arrows hit him with force. Both Lee Bong-chul and Kim Bong-gu seems to be in shock, and the farmer grumbles, wondering what is going on. At that moment, an arrow heads straight for Kang-jun, but he calmly catches it with his hand before it hits his face. Kang-jun looks at the broken arrow in his hand, grumbling in irritation about why it happened. Kim Bong-gu and Lee Bong-chul stare at him in disbelief. The farmer wondered how he had pulled it off, while the latter asked what he meant. Kang-jun responded indifferently, explaining that it was simple luck. He then turns to the hunters, reprimanding them for their lack of focus, and angry adds that he nearly died because of them. He then mutters exhaustedly about how difficult and bitter it is to try and make a living. Kim Bong-gu watches Kang-jun and thinks to himself, wondering if he really almost died, but then realizes that isn't quite the case. He then looks at the arrow lying on the ground, and wondering if it really was just luck. More skeletons attack. Then Bong-gu shouts, demanding that they take out those creatures first. Lee Bong-chul joins him, emphasizing the need to wipe them out. While the three hunters fight the skeletons at the front, Dao-su in the back, clutching his head in pain and calling out for his leader. At that moment, Kang-jun is playing rock, paper, scissors with him. He says he's thinking of playing rock this time, but might change his mind. Dao-su then begs him to stop. Kang-jun asks why he refuses to play, explaining that it's a fun game. Dao-su complains that he is the only one getting hit and begs to be killed. Kang-jun replies that this time might be different and invites him to the next round. Meanwhile, the F-rank hunter watches them in silence. The F-rank hunter thinks to himself that this man has been bothering him for some time. He recalls Kang-jun's previous warning to keep acting right, and he sees how Kang-jun is acting, as if he knows something and is proud of it. He then wonders if the man belongs to the administration office. At the same time, Kang-jun continues his game, asking Dao-su what he plans to play next. Dao-su begs him to play fair, which leads Kang-jun to ask disdainfully if he's been accused of cheating, something Dao-su quickly denies. Kang-jun cuts him off, announcing that he's decided to go with rock. Taking fast, Dao-su excitedly decides to choose paper. The F-rank hunter shakes his head, thinking that the office couldn't have sent lunatics like them. And when the F-rank hunter turns away, Kang-jun's expression turns serious, as he thinks to himself that they are about to arrive. Up ahead, Lee Bong-chul finishes off the last skeleton, commenting that it seems to be the final one. Kim Bong-gu confirms that it's finally over. Kim Bong-gu says everyone did a great job, and suggests they head back now. Suddenly, the F-rank hunter is startled and shouts, asking what he is seeing while pointing forward. In the distance, through the fog, the silhouette of a monastery or a castle appears. A system window appears in front of Kim Bong-gu, announcing that the hidden dungeon called the Monastery of Demon Worshippers has been opened. A system window appears in front of Kim Bong-gu, announcing that the hidden dungeon called the Monastery of Demon Worshippers has been opened. Kim Bong-gu wonders in surprise about it being a hidden dungeon, and he thinks that this type of dungeon is where people hit the jackpot because it is filled with priceless artifacts and rare magic books, as well as treasures that cannot be found anywhere else, sometimes even containing elixirs. Kim Bong-gu feels extremely excited. He thinks that what he wants most right now is to finally find a elixir, the only medicine capable of waking his mother from her coma. Kim Bong-gu continues to think, remembering that those appearing in actions are sold at exorbitant prices, much higher than he can afford. He realizes that if he manages to get one himself, this will be his only chance. He adds that he doesn't want to back down, but wants to give it a try. Then he asks the group out loud what they should do about the hidden dungeon. Lee Bong-shu looks at the system window, commenting that this is the first time he's seen one in person, and he thinks that if they report it to the office will give them a small reward and take all the rights for themselves. Kim Bong-gu suggests that since they are already there, it's better to try and clear it themselves. Lee Bong-shu responds doubtfully, questioning if he really thinks this group is capable of succeeding, adding frankly that only the two of them have any real power. Kim Bong-gu tries to convince him by pointing out that they have become strong enough and that is still within a D-rank gate, so it's not too dangerous. When Lee Bong-shu asks if he's sure about that, Kim Bong-gu assures him that the worst case scenario is that it's just D-rank. Then Lee Bong-shu gets excited and decides to go for it, thinking to himself that if he makes a huge profit, he could retire forever. He then turns towards the three porters, Kang-jun, Do-soo and F-rank Hunter, and asks for their opinion. Kang-jun wonders if this is considered overtime and also asks about the amount of the overtime pay. Lee Bong-shu raises his hand with 5 fingers, announcing that he will pay 5 times the normal price, but warns them to think carefully as this means the risk will also be 5 times greater. The porters start calculating the value. Since the daily wage was 300,000 won, 5 times that amount is 1,500,000 won. Kang-jun enthusiastically declares his agreement, and the F-rank hunters hesitantly follow suit, announcing his participation as well. Kim Bong-gu nods his head, saying the deal is sealed and announces the start of the raid, while Lee Bong-shu adds that they are heading out now. The three porters follow the hunters towards the monastery, and as they approach the majestic and terrifying Gothic building, Kim Bong-gu comments that the gate seems to have a terrifying aura, so he announces that he will enter first. The group enters through the massive doors. Kang-jun notices that the place is very dark and Kim Bong-gu agrees, adding that it is better to move with caution. And as they move forward, the door locks on its own. Then Kim Bong-gu suddenly screams, warning that the door is closing. Lee Bong-shu turns around in a panic, wondering if they have become trapped. The door shouts completely behind them. Lee Bong-shu screams, telling everyone to try and open it as he rushes towards it. He tries to push the heavy, ornate door, but realizes that it doesn't move. He punches the door with his fist in anger and concludes that the door will not open until the place is cleared of monsters. Kim Bong-gu responds calmly, reminding them that they came from the start with the intention of finishing it, so they decided to continue moving forward. Do-soo wonders about the locked door, but Kang-jun reassures him, saying it is nothing and that in the worst case scenario it's just a barrier spell he can break if necessary, encouraging him to move forward. The group advances through a long dark corridor decorated with strange sculptures, where Kim Bong-gu points out the strangeness of the absence of monsters and Lee Bong-shu agrees. Suddenly, Kim Bong-gu stops and tells them to wait, then marvels at what he sees. Meanwhile, Lee Bong-shu's face also shows an expression of shock. The group discovers a large hall filled with a massive amount of corpses and blood, as if a violent battle had taken place. Lee Bong-shu murmurs that he cannot believe what he's seeing. Kim Bong-gu observes that it looks as if a battle took place there and both sides were annihilated, when suddenly the F-rank hunter screams to alert them about something. At the end of the corridor, there's a blood-stained altar, upon which stands a massive statue of a winged demon, while Kim Bong-gu seems to stutter as he wonders if what he's seeing is really a demon. Kang-jun silently wonders what is happening in that place. While thinking that he has seen that scene before, Do-soo notices something carved on the altar, pointing out that it looks like a language from another world. Kang-jun orders him to translate, and Do-soo responds affirmatively. Do-soo begins to examine the inscriptions, explaining that they are written in the language of the demonic world. Lee Bong-shu asks if he can read them, and Do-soo responds, adjusting his monocle, that he will read them. Do-soo reads the first part, which states that the test must be passed and dignity proven, while Kim Bong-gu asks about the meaning of the test. Do-soo looks at the corpses scattered around them and concludes that the test was to fight the monsters guarding the place, adding that since they are already dead, it means they have already passed the test. Do-soo continues to read, pointing to the inscription that mentions that faith and loyalty must be proven by offering 10 living souls on the altar. Lee Bong-shu wonders in disgust what kind of nonsense he is reading. Dao-su continues to read, explaining that the text refers to the descent of the noble guardian of the hell, and the need to kneel before him and beg for forgiveness, and that only those who he forgives can return alive. Dao-su comments with admiration on the blood-stained altar and the lit candles, saying it is incredible and pointing out that the altar is enchanted with a summoning spell strong enough to summon a high-level demon. Lee Bong-shu yells angrily at him, calling him a senile old fool, and expressing his disbelief in such talk. Dao-su calmly points to inscriptions on the nearby wall, explaining that they symbolize hellfire, and he explains that the hellfire is an eternal flame that feeds on life force and is a common catalyst for summoning demons. Kim Bong-gu realizes this in horror, pointing out that each flame of this type requires a person's life and that there are already 9 candles lit on the altar. Kim Bong-gu concludes that 9 sacrifices have already been made and that one more will complete the ritual, and asks if this is supposedly a way to summon the demon and beg for it to let them live, to which Dao-su confirms, according to what is written on the plaque. Lee Bong-shu mocks them, wondering if they really believe in that. Suddenly, the F-rank hunter intervenes, saying they have to make a decision. Kim Bong-gu asks him in surprise what he means, and the hunter responds with a terrifying look while clutching his back, wondering if they are just going to sit there and all die. Kim Bong-gu looks confused as he asks what he means. The F-rank hunter continues in a threatening tone, saying that the time has come. Lee Bong-shu looks at him in horror, wondering why he was that look in his eyes. Then the F-rank hunter bursts into hysterical laughter. Lee Bong-shu yells angrily, calling him a scoundrel and expressing that this situation is not funny, while Bong-gu looks terrified. The hunter apologizes sarcastically, saying that seeing everyone frozen in fear was so pathetic that made him laugh. Then he coldly announces that the time has come to decide who will be the next sacrifice. Wonder who among them is the most useless human. Kim Bong-gu protests, refusing and insisting that if they look carefully, there must be a way for everyone to get out alive. As for Lee Bong-shu, he thinks to himself that this man seems crazy, adding that if someone has to die, it should be someone who has already lived long enough, while his eyes turns toward Dao-su. Dao-su notices that look directed at them and wonders if he is the one being referred to as someone who was lived long enough. Then he realizes that he is not human in the first place, and wonders in fear if the one in question is his master, who was over 300 years old. Dao-su whispers to his master, Kang-jun, begging for his forgiveness, warning him that those insolent people seems to be targeting him and describing him as someone who was already lived long enough. But Kang-jun responds calmly, looking at him and confirming that he is the target. And when Dao-su wonders in confusion if he is truly the target, Kang-jun confirms it once again. Then he tells him to stay still, referring to his previous loss in the game of rock, paper, scissors. So Dao-su submits to his will, and at that moment Kim Bong-gu screams, demanding that they do not rush and instead try to find a way for everyone to survive. Lee Bong-shu looks at Kim Bong-gu, accusing him of still trying to play the saint. He asserts that he is not wrong, warning that if they continue like this, everyone will be trapped and perish, and he angrily adds that it's all because Kim Bong-gu brought the matter up in the first place. But the latter tries to calm him down, saying that arguing about who is right will not change a thing. Lee Bong-shu responds with a look of hatred, saying that if he insists on playing the hypocrite until the end, then he should be the one to die. Kim Bong-gu wonders in shock what he means, to which Lee Bong-shu responds sarcastically, wondering if he really doesn't want that. And suddenly the F-rank hunter begins to laugh hysterically and comments on how the scene is incredibly entertaining, adding that when people are backed into a corner, they reveal their ugly natures. Lee Bong-shu turns to him in anger, asking him what is wrong with him, to which the F-rank hunter responds that there is no need for further fighting, as the matter has become clear. Then the F-rank hunter reveals his true face, explaining that he intended to kill all of them from the very beginning, and he begins to cast a spell. Then a dark purple energy gathers around him, and a skeleton rises from the ground in response to his magic. Then Lee Bong-shu realizes with horror that he is a necromancer and screams in anger, trying to curse him. Necromancer, who was formerly the F-rank hunter, smiles with a malicious grin, noting that they have finally realized his true nature. Then he reveals his identity as Assassin Hunter belonging to the Anti-Office Alliance, and he corrects Lee Bong-shu, stating that he is not a trash rank. but a A rank, explaining that he is fundamentally different from the others like them, considering himself a great being. Lee Bong-shu is stunned as he repeats the name of the alliance, remembering that they, unlike the Hunter's office, believe that those with special powers should monopolize health and power, and he realizes that this man is an assassin who tracks hunters affiliated with the office. Lee Bong-shu stares at the skeletons that the necromancer summoned, thinking desperately that their number could reach 20 or 30, and he realizes that they are now also facing a rank A assassin. Then Kim Bong-gu says that there is no chance of victory. Lee Bong-shu falls to his knees, announcing that it's over and that they are as good as dead. But Kim Bong-gu shouts at him in anger, demanding that they at least try to fight. The necromancer reaches out towards the falling Lee Bong-shu, mocking his posture and demanding that he accepts his fate in becoming a sacrifice for the great cause. And at that moment, Kang-jun steps forward, addressing the necromancer and demanding that he stop. He explains to him that killing this man now would be a bit annoying. Then the necromancer asks him in a surprise why, to which Kang-jun responds that he is indebted to these people. Kang-jun confronts the necromancer, who was previously a F-rank hunter, reminding him that he had clearly warned him before that he would have been better to keep pretending until the end. And when the necromancer asks if he belongs to the office, Kang-jun denies it, but the necromancer insists on knowing his true origin. Then Kang-jun simply replies that he came from the house in Silohandong. The necromancer then realizes that Kang-jun has no intention of revealing his affiliation and asks again how he got there specifically. Kang-jun sarcastically replies that he came by public transport on a direct bus station. And when the necromancer expresses his doubt about the logic of the answer, Kang-jun responds that he will complain anyway, regardless of whether he answers or not. Kang-jun changes the subject and asks his opponent about his plan to summon a demon. The necromancer reveals that he intends to summon Marbus, one of the 72 great demons. Kang-jun repeats the name as if he were familiar to him. Then the necromancer explains that he plans to declare his loyalty to Marbus and enter into a contract of servitude with him, but Kang-jun interrupts him, saying that this explains everything. The necromancer continues explaining his objective, stating that he seeks to borrow Marbus' immense power to rebuild the world order, but Kang-jun interrupts him again, noting that he had thought his features were familiar for some time. So Kang-jun casually mentions that he's sure he personally killed most of the 72 demons during the previous invasion, and an image of him fighting them flashes through his memory. He also wonders if this Marbus is one of the few who managed to escape and survive back then. As another image of a demon fleeing flashes in his mind. The necromancer ignores his words and firmly declares that Kang-jun must die for the sake of the great cause. The necromancer unleashes dark magic, summoning a horde of skeletal and shadowy figures. At that moment, Lee Bong-shu is overcome with despair, mourning his imminent death in such an absurd way. While Kim Bong-gu apologizes to everyone, admitting that his greed is what led them into this situation, then Kang-jun steps forward, passing the desperate Kim Bong-gu, and says with calm realism that death will come for them all one day, but not today. Kim Bong-gu looks at him in confusion, not understanding what he means. Kang-jun stares down the necromancer and his summoned army, coldly stating that if he wants him dead, he'd better pay his salary first, and then he will die. As soon as he finishes speaking, he releases a massive torrent of dark purple mana that floods the entire hall. The necromancer stares at him in shock and disbelief, wondering in astonishment what he is witnessing, and how Kang-jun could possibly possess such powerful black mana. The necromancer realizes in horror that Kang-jun's black mana is similar to his own, yet it differs immensely in his scale, and as his eyes widen in terror, Kang-jun's reflection appears in them, and he stimmers in sheer terror. Behind Kang-jun, a giant, terrifying and shadowy figure emerges, resembling the Green Reaper himself. The necromancer screams in panic, realizing that what stands before him is death personified, and he soon collapses, completely paralyzed by fear, pleading and begging for mercy. Only one thought crosses his mind: he must escape. At that moment, Kang-jun calls out in a powerful voice for Kramsley, Dao Su's true name. The latter immediately responds in the affirmative. Then Kang-jun orders him to prepare to show proper respect. Dao Su's eyes glow red as he begins a grand, formal announcement, proclaiming the arrival of an irregular catastrophe. He continues in a booming voice, identifying Kang-jun as the king of the dead, who rules and reigns over the living. And Kramsley concludes his grand announcement, addressing the panicked necromancer. The mighty immortal All hail His Majesty, the Emperor, as a swirling aura of dark energy envelops him. And the scene concludes with all the skeletons kneeling. Kim Bong-gu looks at the scene in complete shock, wondering in his mind what is happening. Meanwhile, the necromancer, who had been pretending to be a half-rank hunter, was kneeling on the ground before Kang-jun, apologizing and begging him to spare his life. Kang-jun, surrounded by an aura of dark energy, tells him that frankly he also wanted a normal life. Kang-jun takes a step forward towards the kneeling necromancer and squats down before him. Continuing, he says that he wanted a quiet and simple life without drawing any attention. He then grabs the necromancer's face, forces him to look up, and says sarcastically that he talks as if his desire for quiet life were some kind of noble wish. At that moment, Kang-jun's eyes glow red with a strange symbol, and his reflection appears in the eyes of the terrified necromancer. Dao-su clumsily, coldly realizes that his master has activated his demonic eye. Dao-su explains that this is a high-level illusion technique that drags anyone who meets his master's gaze into a nightmare vision. Dao-su explains that the greater the power gap between his master and the victim, the more terrifying the hell the victim sees. The necromancer screams in terror as horrific visions of monsters and blood flood in his consciousness. The necromancer collapses to the ground unconscious, trembling. Kim Bong-gu watches the scene in complete confusion, wondering what is happening now and who is this man Kang-jun really is. Kang-jun stands up and looks down at the collapsed body, commenting that the necromancer wasn't too bad, as he remained in consciousness longer than most of his victims. Then Kang-jun turns his gaze back to Kim Bong-gu and asks if he wants to end up like the necromancer. Kim Bong-gu stammers a refusal, trembling with fear. Kang-jun orders him to be careful with his words. At that moment, Dao-su steps forward, asking his masters to leave, and asks if they should kill Kim Bong-gu to ensure his silence. Kim Bong-gu is terrified upon hearing this suggestion, but Kang-jun replies that it's fine and that he has already cast a prohibition spell on him. Upon hearing this, Dao-su suggests that they should now focus on summoning the demon and finding an exit. Kang-jun agrees, adding that if the summoned demon refuses to cooperate, they will kill it themselves and find another way out. Kang-jun looks at the necromancer's body lying on the ground and orders the skeletons who are still kneeling to summon the demon. The skeletons immediately stand up, dragging the necromancer's body and place it on the altar. One of the skeletons raises his sword and stabs the victim as the 10th offering, blood splattering everywhere, while Bong-gu covers his mouth in horror. The 10th and final candle on the altar lights up, and an enormous dark energy erupts from the altar. Pushing Kim Bong-gu back, a massive winged demon creature similar to a gargoyle shudders on the altar. Kang-jun looks at the summoned creature and comments that it's an impressive entrance. Meanwhile, the summoned demon Marbus told that for centuries he had not forgotten the day he witnessed the massacre of his king before his eyes, and as the few survivors had to scatter across the realms, he remembers that after losing his power in that battle, he became a weak fugitive, wandering through infinite dimensions, but enduring driven solely by the desire for revenge. Marbus thinks that he has finally regained some of his power and answered the call to this strange dimension. Then the demon roars thunderously, asking who dares to summon him and who dares to propose a pact with one of the 72 demons. Marbus, the guardian of hell. Marbus sees that this place to which he was summoned is perfect for rebuilding his power and planning his revenge. Then he declares his agreement and acceptance of the offering. Kang-jun looks at the demon Marbus and says that he remembers him now. Marbus looks confused, thinking that this voice sounds familiar. Kang-jun smirks and asks if he was the one who fled first back then. Then Marbus recognizes Kang-jun in horror and mutters, wonder if he is the immortal. Kang-jun sarcastically comments that if someone lives long enough, they will eventually meet everyone again, noting that it's interesting to find him here. He adds that he has been a long time and he almost feels happy to see him. Terrified, Marbus asks, why is Kang-jun in this barren and useless dimension? Kang-jun simply replies that this is his hometown. Immediately, Marbus changes his tone, declaring that this is a truly wonderful dimension. Meanwhile, he thought to himself that he was as good as dead and that for the last time, at least he had a chance to flee. Marbus remembers that even with all the 72 demons united, they lost like dogs and that is his... Marbus remembers that even with all 72 demons united, they lost like dogs and that in his current state, there is no way he can face the immortal alone. Marbus decides to himself that he must escape while Kang-jun is distracted, and that he will gather his scattered brothers for revenge one day, assuring himself that it cannot end like this. Marbus immediately begins to beg, calling Kang-jun by the title Great King of Death, but Kang-jun interrupts him, telling him to speak normally. Marbus immediately pleads for his life to be spared and swears that he was only dragged here by the summoning ritual, and never intended to invade Kang-jun's hometown, as he continues to beg for mercy, swearing that he will disappear forever and hide in a distant world to live in silence forever. Kang-jun listens and then responds that he understands. Marbus looks at him in confusion. Kang-jun repeats that he said he could go, then turns to Do-soo, saying that Seol might be waiting for them, so they should finish this and go home. Marbus enthusiastically thanks the great immortal for his boundless grace, and as he turns to leave, Kang-jun suddenly remembers what he read in the day-by-day parenting guide, which states that pets help a child's emotional development a lot, and that those who grow up with pets tends to have higher IQs and greater empathy. While Marbus tried to withdraw cautiously, announcing that he would be leaving now, Kang-jun stops him again, telling him to wait. Marbus freezes in place and nervously asks what he wants. Kang-jun looks at him and simply orders him to bark. Marbus is stunned and asks incredulously what he means. Kang-jun repeats his order, saying he told him to bark. Marbus seethes with rage, thinking to himself how can the immortal do this to him. The demon continues to tremble with humiliation and thinks how dare the immortal subject him to such a shameful act. Kang-jun looks at him coldly and tells him to try harder. In the end, Marbus gives in and lets out a loud bark, swearing to himself that he will never forget the humiliation of this day. Kang-jun comments that Marbus is good at it. The humiliated Marbus responds that it's an honor for him. Kang-jun clarifies that he was not saying this as a compliment, but that he was actually like a real dog. He smiles and agrees with him, commenting that it's truly incredible how much he can look like a dog. Marbus seethes with rage internally, unable to believe he was come to this situation. He, one of the 72 demons who ruled the entire demon world. Kang-jun tells Marbus that he passed, then asks if he can transform. Marbus asks in confusion what he should transform into. Kang-jun thinks for a moment, wondering what kind of puppy a 3-year-old girl would like. Marbus panics internally, thinking that he is a demon among demons, that he gained fame for his overwhelming power and extremely cruelty, and that he was nicknamed the Guardian of Hell and ruled at the top of the demon world with his 72 brothers, only to find himself now transformed into a small, chubby, petting corgi, wondering about his form and not believing what he is doing to himself. Kang-jun comments that he is certainly cute, but there is something a little strange. He intervenes, saying that with all due respect, this will not be enough as a pet. But Kang-jun disagrees, commenting that he looks too weak and that his leg seems a bit short, which could mean his movement would be poor. Do-soo responds that his insides are a complete different beast anyway, so why not prioritize what Her Highness would prefer instead. Marbus in corgi form, and he thinks to himself how these insolent fools dare to belittle him, and that he will never forget the humiliation of this day, and will take his revenge one day. Kang-jun coldly orders him to try something else. The trembling Marbus agrees. Marbus transforms into a cute white Pomeranian. Kang-jun orders to see the next one. He then transforms into a long-haired dog. Kang-jun repeats his request to see the next one. He transforms into a dachshund. With an even more irritated look, Kang-jun orders to see the next one. Marbus returns to his corgi form. Kang-jun then asks if he was a problem with that. Marbus responds, wondering in disbelief who he is referring to and if he is the one being spoken to. Kang-jun confirms that he means him. Marbus quickly thinks to himself that there is no way he would dare. Kang-jun's eyes narrow as he orders to see the next form. Marbus desperately transforms into a small Doberman. Kang-jun's face suddenly lights up and he shows his admiration. He declares that this is the best one yet and leans in to pet the Doberman's head. Marbus thinks angrily how he dares to pet him, one of the 72 demons and a leading power in the demon world, as if he were nothing more than a common dog. And as Kang-jun continues to pet him, Marbus finds that the touch actually feels quite nice and that he wants to wag his tail. Dao-su comments that he thinks this would be the perfect compromise between Kang-jun's preference for power and soft taste, since she would love something cute, and that he believes Her Highness, the princess, will also love it. Kang-jun holds the Doberman Marbus and asks for King Bong-gu's opinion. King Bong-gu replies in amazement that he looks truly great. Kang-jun says it's time to head back while holding Marbus in his arms. Marbus thinks to himself how utterly humiliated he feels, yet wonders why he also feels strangely satisfied. Kang-jun and Dao-su turn to leave. King Bong-gu calls out, apologizing and addresses him as Sir. Kang-jun asks if he is calling him Sir. King Bong-gu confirms and begins to speak. King Bong-gu suggests that it would be better to retrieve the body before leaving in order to handle the matter smoothly. Kang-jun asks him to clarify what it means handling. King Bong-gu explains that this is a major incident involving the management union's anti-burial, and that the management burial will definitely investigate the matter. Kang-jun thinks to himself that he hates troublesome incidents, and especially detests receiving unnecessary attention or focus. Kang-jun continues to speak, telling Bong-gu that he was incredible back there, and saved his life. Kang-jun thinks to himself that he wasn't a hunter anyway. Confused, King Bong-gu asks for clarification. King Bong-gu asks, "What do you mean?" Kang-jun taps King Bong-gu's shoulder and explains that he was referring to how King Bong-gu personally stepped forward and eliminated the evil and terrible criminal with a single blow, only to be interrupted by a gasp. Shocked, King Bong-gu wonders if he really did that. Kang-jun looks at King Bong-gu, who now appears completely confused with complex mathematical equations appearing in the background, and tells him that he was been through a lot. King Bong-gu, sweating profusely, responds that he was only doing what he had to do. Kang-jun taps King Bong-gu on the shoulder and says he admires his sharp attitude. Then, Kang-jun announces that it's time to go, and a glowing blue portal opens on the altar. Blood asks the three of them, Kang-jun carrying Marbus, Dao-su, and King Bong-gu, step through the portal. Outside the entrance of the gate, King Bong-gu was talking to the official from the Bureau of Management. The official comments that what happened was like a bolt out of the blue and that he is glad everyone returned without serious injuries. The official tells King Bong-gu that he has just received the body identification results, and it has been confirmed that it was an assassin from the management union's anti-burial who was on the wanted list. He explains that the Gate Special Investigation Division will form a dedicated team to investigate, and that they will summon King Bong-gu to provide a formal statement later, to which King Bong-gu reluctantly agreed. The official adds that once the investigation is over, the incident will be announced in the media. King Bong-gu repeats the word with concern, wondering if the matter will truly be announced. King Bong-gu stops for the medics carrying the covered body on a stretcher and thinks that if it weren't for Mr. Kang-jun, they would have been the ones ending up as lifeless bodies.
Hey, if you've watched this far and still haven't subscribed, what are we waiting for, dude? Click the subscribe button real quick. Let's get to 1,000 subscribers together. It only takes 2 seconds. Leave a like and comment something or one emoji below. I read all the comments and I like them all. And if the Hey Par button is showing up for you, press it. It helps.